What would you do if just 30 minutes before your wedding you discover that the man you love and your maid of honor, your best friend since childhood, have been betraying you all along, having an affair, and you're also 5 months pregnant with his child? Most ladies would fall apart and cry. But what this black bride did next left an entire wedding guest speechless. She turned betrayal into power and transformed the most painful day of her life into an unforgettable moment of truth. You won't believe how she exposed them. Stay tuned and watch the story unfolds. Marissa Coleman woke to the soft chime of her alarm and the golden light spilling through gauzy curtains. Today was her wedding day. After 3 years of love, uncertainty, and second chances, it was finally happening. And despite all the nerves, she felt peace. She shifted gently in the plush bridal suite bed, placing a hand on her growing belly. At 5 months pregnant, the curve of her stomach had become more pronounced in recent weeks. The baby gave a soft flutter beneath her palm, a quiet affirmation that everything was unfolding just as it should. The resort grounds below were already humming with quiet activity, florists weaving garlands through the garden arch, staff bustling discreetly to set up tables, and early-arriving family members milling about in pastel linens. Marissa rose slowly, savoring the moment. She padded barefoot across the cool tile to the window and looked out over the ocean, her heart full. This wasn't just a ceremony. It was the promise of a future, the beginning of a family. Her gown hung nearby, a vision of soft ivory chiffon and subtle beading, tailored perfectly to accommodate her pregnancy. The dress shimmered with understated elegance, just like her. It had taken weeks of fittings and tears to find the one that made her feel both beautiful and powerful. Today, she would wear it like armor. A knock at the door broke her reverie. Her maid of honor, Keisha, stepped inside, carrying 2 steaming cups of herbal tea. Keisha was radiant in a satin robe, her hair curled and pinned like a magazine bride. She'd been by Marissa's side since 10th grade geometry, back when Marissa was a shy girl with dreams bigger than her voice. Over the years, their bond had withstood distance, bad breakups, and late-night phone calls laced with tears. Keisha smiled wide and handed her a cup. "How's my favorite mama to be?" Marissa grinned, feeling like I could float. "I'd hope so," Keisha said, sitting beside her on the velvet chaise. "You've got a man who adores you, a baby on the way, and this place looks like something off the knot. Too perfect to be real," Marissa said playfully, brushing a curl from her forehead. Keisha gave her a gentle nudge. "It's real. You deserve every bit of this." As they sipped their tea, the bridal suite began to buzz with energy. The makeup artist arrived, followed by the hairstylist, and then the photographer with his assistant in tow. The space filled with laughter, music, and curling iron steam. Marissa's father, Samuel, peeked in briefly, dapper in his charcoal suit, eyes a little misty already. "You sure about this, pumpkin?" he asked, teasing. Marissa chuckled. "You're not getting cold feet, are you, Dad?" "Never. Just making sure my little girl still wants to marry that tall, smooth-talking jazz head." "I do," she said softly. Samuel nodded, stepping back out. "I'll be waiting outside when it's time." "Don't keep me too long. I'm not trying to cry in front of 100 people today." The room filled with easy laughter again, but beneath Marissa's smile was a swell of emotion. She thought of the mother she'd lost at 16 and how proud she would have been. She thought of the quiet nights Terrence had held her belly, whispering hopes for their child. She thought of her own longing for love, stability, and a family untouched by abandonment. All of it had led her here. By the time her hair was styled into a soft crown of curls and her makeup glowed under natural light, Marissa felt like herself, only elevated. Empowered. Ready. As the bridal bouquet of cream roses and eucalyptus was placed into her hands, Marissa stood before the full-length mirror, her breath catching in her throat. She didn't just look like a bride. She looked like the woman she had always hoped to become. And this day, was hers. Marissa was seated before a vintage vanity mirror, halfway through her lashes being applied, when a soft knock interrupted the rhythm of the morning. The door opened just a sliver before anyone responded. A young black man in a sharply pressed waiter's uniform stood in the threshold, looking nervous. His name tag read Darnell. He held a silver tray, but instead of drinks or hors d'oeuvres, it carried only a folded piece of white paper. "Delivery for bride," he said quietly, his eyes meeting Marissa's in the mirror. Emma, one of the bridesmaids, stepped forward to take the note, but Darnell shook his head gently. "I was told to give it directly to her. Please." The entire room stilled for a moment. Marissa blinked, then reached out with a steady hand and took the paper from the tray. "Thank you," she said, her voice calm. Darnell offered a respectful nod and disappeared as quickly as he'd come. Marissa's fingers unfolded the note. Her eyes skimmed the message once, then again. A third time, slower. The neat handwriting felt like it had been scrawled in a rush, desperate yet sincere. "Check the second floor men's room. I am sorry. Darnell." The air in the room suddenly felt thick. Her skin flushed hot, then cold. "Everything okay?" Keisha asked from across the room, adjusting the strap of her robe as she sipped on her orange juice. Marissa nodded too quickly. "Yeah, just something about the schedule." She stood. "I need some air," she added, already stepping toward the door. "Girl, your lashes," the makeup artist started. "I'll be right back," Marissa said over her shoulder. Her voice was light, but inside, her pulse pounded like a drum. She closed the suite door behind her and walked briskly down the hallway, past flower arrangements and staff wheeling carts of champagne. Her breath caught with each step. The staircase to the second floor loomed like a portal. She climbed it, one slow tread at a time, each step echoing in her ears. She turned the corner into the quiet corridor where the men's room was located. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the doorknob. But before she touched it, she heard it. Muffled voices, low laughter, words that should have been impossible on a day like this. Through the narrow crack of the door, Marissa's breath hitched. There they were. Keisha. Terrence. Keisha was perched on the marble counter, her legs loosely wrapped around Terrence's waist. His tux jacket was unbuttoned. Her hands were tangled in his collar. Marissa's stomach turned, nausea rising not from pregnancy, but from betrayal so sharp it felt physical. "I swear," Keisha whispered, her tone half playful, half exasperated, "if I have to smile through this entire ceremony like I'm thrilled to be watching y'all get married." Terrence kissed her neck. "Just a few more hours. We stick to the plan. Once I've locked in that business link with her father, we'll have our little falling out. 1 year tops." Marissa felt her legs weaken. "But this baby," Keisha muttered, "ugh, it's messing up the timeline. She waddles around like it's the second coming." Terrence scoffed. "The kid's a useful complication. Makes the wedding look more real. And it'll soften the settlement when we part ways." Keisha laughed. "You're cold. That's why you love me." Marissa's hands shook so badly she almost dropped her phone, but instincts took over. She raised it and hit record. She captured it all. The laughter, the plotting, the dismissal of her pregnancy like it was just a pawn in a business move. The friend she trusted most and the man she planned to marry, speaking as though she were a blind, disposable obstacle. They had no idea. She backed away, quietly, step by careful step, until she was at the far end of the hallway again. Her breath caught, her vision swimming with hot tears, but not a single one spilled. Not yet. Darnell was leaning discreetly against the wall near his staff door. When he saw her, he stood straight, concern written all over his face. "I'm sorry," he said again. "I couldn't just let you go through with it." Marissa took a breath, forcing composure back into her limbs. "You did the right thing. I didn't know how else to say it," he said. "I was clearing a tray and heard voices. I only saw enough to know it was wrong." She nodded. "Thank you. What's your full name?" "Darnell Brooks. I'm a temp from the event staffing agency." Marissa looked down at her phone. "Can you get this to someone who controls the screen monitors at the ceremony?" He blinked. "You want to play it? At the wedding? I'm going to give a signal. Just one line. When you hear it, I want it played." Darnell hesitated, then nodded with conviction. "My cousin Marco runs the AV for the venue. I'll make sure he's ready. Tell him to keep the feed hidden until I say the words. I'd like to share something meaningful with you all. That's the cue. You got it. Marissa passed the video to his phone via airdrop. Only show it when I give a cue. No sooner. I promise. She turned and started back toward the suite, her movement steadier now, her breath calmer, the trembling locked behind the iron while forming inside her. In the bridal suite, Keisha greeted her with a wide grin. Girl, there you are. I was about to send out a search party. Marissa returned the smile without a hint of malice. Just needed a little quiet before the big moment. She walked over to the makeup chair and sat back down, allowing the artist to finish applying her lashes. If anyone noticed the shift in her energy, they didn't speak it aloud. But her father, Samuel, stepped in moments later and gave her a long look, curious, searching. He leaned down and murmured into her ear, "Everything all right, pumpkin?" Marissa looked up at him, her eyes fierce but calm. "Just follow my lead today," she whispered. At the end of the aisle, Terrence stood tall in his tailored navy suit, his hands folded tightly in front of him. His smile stretched wide, practiced and camera-ready. The guests noticed, of course. How could they not? How confident and calm he looked, as if nothing could touch him. Next to him stood Keisha, her sage green gown flowing elegantly, bouquet in hand, her posture poised. She wore the face of someone expecting a show, just not the one she was about to get. Then the doors opened. Gasps rippled softly as Marissa Coleman stepped into view. She was, without exaggeration, breathtaking. Her ivory gown glided like liquid light over her baby bump, hugging her form with graceful strength. Her curls had been pinned into a soft crown, and her face was serene, too serene. It wasn't the blissful glow of a bride giddy with romance. It was the glow of a woman who had made peace with pain and turned it into power. Samuel, her father, stood beside her in a black tux with a single cream rose on his lapel. He offered his daughter his arm. She took it with quiet certainty. The music shifted to the bridal march. As they walked down the aisle, cameras flashed. Phones lifted discreetly. Guests beamed, but none of them could see the steel behind Marissa's eyes. Not yet. Terrence smiled wide as she approached. He reached for her hand as Samuel kissed her cheek and gently passed her forward. The officiant welcomed everyone warmly, his voice echoing under the wooden arch adorned with cascading florals. Family, friends, we gather here today to witness the union of Marissa and Terrence. Marissa stood tall beside Terrence, one hand still resting protectively on her belly, the other gripping her bouquet. She nodded along as the officiant spoke about love, trust, and commitment. Her eyes flicked toward the back of the pavilion where Darnell stood, discreet in his staff uniform, hovering near the sound booth. He caught her gaze and gave a subtle nod. And then came a moment. As part of their ceremony, the couple has prepared personal vows to share with one another. The officiant smiled and gestured to Terrence. "Terrence, if you would." Terrence cleared his throat and pulled out a small folded piece of paper from his breast pocket. "Marissa," he began, his voice rich and steady. "You have been my light, my peace, and my reason to become a better man. Watching you carry our child with strength and grace has made me fall in love with you all over again." Marissa stared at him as he spoke. Every word was an insult now. Her ears buzzed with the memory of his voice hours earlier, calling her baby a useful complication. Watching him perform in front of her family, her community, the very people he meant to deceive, it stirred something cold and ancient inside her. He finished, folded the paper, and smiled at her, expecting tears, adoration, gratitude. Instead, Marissa stepped forward. She held her bouquet tightly and took a deep breath. "Before I share my vows," she said, voice unwavering, "I'd like to share something meaningful with you all." At that moment, Darnell moved. The floral slideshow on the large reception monitors faded. The guests murmured in confusion. Then, with a flicker, a new video began to play, blurry at first, then sharp. Terrence's voice boomed over the pavilion sound system. "Just a few more hours. We stick to the plan. Once I've locked in that business link with her father, we'll have our little falling out." The audience stilled, frozen. On the screen, Keisha's face appeared, her voice unmistakable. But this baby, ugh. It's messing up the timeline. Guests gasped. Hands flew to mouths. Chairs creaked as people shifted in disbelief. No, someone whispered. The video played on. Terrence, laughing cold. The kid's a useful complication. Keisha, you're cold. Terrence, that's why you love me. Marissa didn't move. Her face was calm, her stance deliberate. She let the evidence speak. Terrence turned toward her, the color draining from his face. What is this? Marissa, what is this? Keisha stepped back from her post, panic in her eyes. She glanced toward the exits. As the screen faded to black, Marissa stepped forward again. There will be no wedding today, she said, her voice cutting through the stunned silence like glass. But there will be truth. Whispers turned into full-on murmurs. Some guests looked to Samuel. Others stared at Terrence with open disgust. Terrence reached out, his voice shaky. Marissa, this is being blown out of proportion. You called my baby a complication, she said, pulling her hand back. You plan to use my family like a stepping stone. I don't want to hear your spin. Keisha had started to inch toward the edge of the pavilion, hoping no one would notice. Going somewhere, Emma, one of the bridesmaids, said sharply, stepping into her path. Keisha stopped cold. Another bridesmaid flanked her opposite side. Y'all planned this for clout? A voice shouted from the back row. A young cousin, eyes wide with rage. Marissa's father joined her at the altar, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. His presence alone was enough. It said, she is not alone. Not now. Not ever. Terrence tried again. Marissa, we should talk. Not here. Not like this. You had every chance to talk honestly, Marissa said. You made your choices. Now I've made mine. Keisha finally snapped. You're embarrassing yourself, she spat, her voice shaking. This is all just drama. You could have handled this in private. Marissa turned slowly to look at her. Private is where betrayal hides. Today it ends. The officiant had long since stepped back, holding his booklet closed in front of him like a priest at a funeral. Terrence stood, shell-shocked, surrounded by silence, so heavy it was suffocating. And Marissa? She turned to face her guests, lifting her chin with dignity. To everyone who came today to celebrate love, I'm sorry this wasn't what you expected. But I believe honesty is more important than ceremony. A beat passed, then another, and then applause. Not polite, not pitying. Fierce, thunderous applause. From the front rows to the back fence. From uncles and aunts and old college friends. Even the venue staff stood straighter. Marissa didn't cry. She simply stood in the storm of it all, strong, glowing, unbroken. She had walked into this wedding to say, I do. Instead, she stood at the altar and declared, I won't. And in doing so, she gave everyone there's something far more powerful than a perfect wedding. She gave them the truth. The thunderous applause slowly faded, replaced by murmurs of disbelief and admiration rippling across the garden pavilion. Some guests still stared blankly at the now black screen where betrayal had been aired like laundry in a stiff coastal breeze. Others shook their heads, whispering to each other with widened eyes, trying to process what they'd just witnessed. Marissa remained steady at the altar, bouquet still in hand, back straight. She turned to face the crowd fully, her voice calm but commanding. Well, she said with a quiet smile, the ceremony's off, but the food is paid for, the band is warmed up, and the weather is beautiful. So let's not waste good food or good music. There was a beat of silence, then a roar of laughter and applause from the guests. And with that, the tide turned. What had moments ago been a public implosion of trust shifted into something far more profound, an act of defiance and celebration. The officiant gently stepped aside, offering her a supportive smile. Marissa descended from the altar with her father by her side. She wasn't the blushing bride she had imagined just hours before. She was something else entirely. Fierce, free, fully herself. As guests made their way to the reception space, the DJ, alerted by Darnell, switched the playlist from soft string instrumentals to uplifting soul classics. Aretha's Respect was the first track to fill the space, and it felt like a blessing. Marissa, without prompting, took the mic near the dance floor. "I know today took a sharp left," she said, laughing lightly. "But this room is full of people I love. And while some folks might have come for a wedding, I think we've earned a celebration instead, a celebration of clarity, of community, of choosing yourself." Her words were met with more applause, some guests even rising to their feet. Marissa caught sight of Darnell, standing near the edge of the room, half hidden behind a floral display, watching everything unfold with quiet humility. She nodded to him and waved him forward. When he hesitated, she beckoned again, this time more firmly. The crowd parted as he walked up, looking unsure of what to expect. "This is Darnell," Marissa said, "and he's the reason I'm not legally tied to a liar right now." Laughter rippled through the room. Darnell looked mortified, but also deeply moved. "Some people would have looked the other way," she continued. "But Darnell chose to speak up. That's integrity. That's courage. And today, I honor that." She handed him a glass of sparkling cider and clinked it with her own. The crowd followed, lifting their glasses toward him. Darnell's eyes glistened as he quietly whispered, "Thank you." Meanwhile, in a corner of the room, Terrence's mother sat frozen in her chair, face pale. She hadn't said a word since the video played. Now, as whispers and glances landed on her, she dabbed her eyes with a linen napkin, shaking her head in disbelief. No one approached her, not even Terrence, who had vanished from sight shortly after the confrontation. Marissa's co-workers, who made up nearly a third of the guest list, began forming a protective circle around her. Dr. Chun, her mentor and head of pediatrics at the hospital, approached with a glass in hand. "When you come back from maternity leave," she said, pulling Marissa into a hug, "I want you in a leadership position. We need your strength, not just your medical skills." Marissa blinked, touched by the offer. "You're serious?" "As serious as you were up there at that altar," Dr. Chun replied with a smile. "We all saw something bigger than heartbreak today. We saw what resilience looks like in real time." The reception transformed into something that defied tradition, a living, breathing tribute to self-respect. Guests danced, toasted, and ate with even more joy than if the original wedding had proceeded as planned. Every hug Marissa received, every kind word shared, felt like pieces of a new foundation being laid beneath her feet. Months later, Marissa sat on the front steps, one hand resting on her now-pronounced belly. She was nearly due. A mug of peppermint tea rested beside her as she watched the sun fall low behind the pines. The past few months had brought peace, and not the kind that comes from avoidance, but the kind that follows truth, healing, and taking back your power. She had walked away from the altar that day with her dignity intact, and what the world had tried to define as a disaster had become her greatest point of transformation. A smile touched her lips as she rubbed her stomach gently. "What should have broken me," she whispered, "built me." And that was the truth. Not the fairy tale, not the fantasy, but the kind of truth she could build a real life on. A new beginning, rooted in strength, not illusion. And this time, no one else was writing her story. If this story touched your heart, like, share, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more powerful, soul-touching stories that restore faith in humanity.